Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of our Life West Leadership Line. I'm Dr. Ron Oberstein, President Life West, and today I have a long friend of mine, long-time friend of mine, Dr. Cliff Hardick, coming to us from London, not England, but London, Ontario, Canada. Just a powerhouse of a chiropractor. Welcome to the show, Cliff.
Glad to be here, Ron. I'm thrilled to death.
Cliff is I'll give you just a synopsis. There's so much to talk about with Cliff. He graduated in 1969 from Logan College of Chiropractic in St. Louis area, right? And I don't know where it was back then, but St. Louis area. Yep. He's practiced in London ever since. 51 years in practice. Still practicing, though his son BJ has taken over quite a bit of what's going on. He's been instrumental in his area in Ontario on governance and on the regulatory boards in Ontario, and has just done amazing things in chiropractic. And today he'll be able to share some of those, and you will feel his excitement for chiropractic 51 years after graduation and his commitment and his passion. So Cliff, I'm excited to have you here. Let's start it off, man. And I don't even know the story. Tell us 51, whatever years ago, how'd you get into chiropractic? How'd chiropractic come to you?
My father had some back problems, and he had gone to a chiropractor in Reno, Nevada. And my parents were divorced, and I used to visit my father for the summers with my brother. And in 1957 or 58, my father had my brother and I go in for spinal exams. This guy was a principal chiropractor. We're going to check everybody in the community. So he checked my spine. He noticed I had a little bit of a short leg. He started using basic technique on me because he was a Logan graduate, which is how I ended up at Logan. And one day he noticed, I think around 1961 or two, maybe 1960. I was 12 years old, about somewhere like that. So maybe 58 or 9. And he went to my father for a haircut. My dad was his barber. And he said, look, I notice your son has a crossed eye sometimes. I'd like to check his neck. So my father said, just a minute here. You want to check my son's neck because he's got a crossed eye? So my father knew I had a crossed eye because I had been scheduled for eye surgery 3 times to cut the muscles. And every time they did the pre-op exam, the eye was at a different angle. So Dr. Osborne, Curtis Osborne, the Logan graduate, he said to my father, he said, well, that's my point. I noticed that it's at different angles. So he said, what do you think about, let's affect the control mechanism of the eye? So my father thought, well, okay. So he said, well, next time I'm in, I'm going to check his neck. Are you okay with that? My father said, yes. So both my dad and Dr. Osborne were old-fashioned guys. I'm just a kid. I don't know nothing. So I go in the office. He doesn't tell me he's going to do anything. He checks my low back. He checks me out. Lie on your side. He gets this apparatus out. He's got the Zenith Hilo, and it's a whang. It's a toggle on my Atlas, and I hear every spring in that Zenith going crunch, and I'm thinking, what happened? So I go outside. I get on my bike. I go home, and I'm sitting there. We're having dinner at my father came home from the barber shop. Well, did you see Dr. Osborne today? Yeah, I did. He said, well, how did that go? I said, gee, I don't know, Dad. He said, when he got done giving me my regular adjustment, he turned me over and he did something to my neck. I don't know. And I just felt everything in my neck, and the table was making springy noise. And my dad said, oh, okay. He said, that's interesting. So that happened 3 or 4 times. And I had finished grade 8. And I went back to go to live with my mom because we visit my dad just in the summers. And in grade 9, I quit wearing my glasses. I had a prism in my left eye.
Yeah.
So my father never said anything to me. Dr. Osborne never said anything to me. And I didn't connect the idea that I wasn't wearing glasses for school anymore in grade 9 with this guy making all the racket in my neck. So I went on to graduate from high school. I went to the University of Nevada Engineering School. And I got a good job at North American Rockwell when I was finishing up engineering school in the aerospace program. And after I got that job, I decided, wait a minute. I remembered in 1962, Kennedy said, we're going to beat the Russians to the moon. And I guess I thought I was going to be driving the rocket ship or something. because this first job I was getting didn't look like anything. And I thought, wow, I never thought about what an engineer did. So the next day I had to go see Dr. Osborne because I stayed in touch with him. I got regular adjustments. So I went in to see him, and I told him about this engineering thing. And he said, yeah, I said, I really wanted you to go to chiropractic school. I was really hoping you'd do that. I said, no, I want to do that, Dr. Osborne. I said, I really want to do that. He said, no. I said, I don't want you to go to chiropractic school if this is just a fallback to some other occupation. I said, no. So he picked up the phone, and he dialed the phone number. Little did I know the dean of Logan was his classmate. So he asked for a guy named Delphin, who I've never heard that name used at Logan ever since that day. Hi, Delphin. He says, I've got a student here that I want to start at Logan. When's your next class? So this was January of the 11th. He cups the phone and he said, next class is January 22nd. Are you going to be there? And I looked at him and I said, tell him I'll be there. I didn't know who he was talking to. I walked out the front door. I had an appointment for the following week. I opened the front door and came back in. I said, where is it? He said, oh, it's in St. Louis. I said, St. Louis. I said, it looks like I won't be here to see you next week, Dr. Osborne. and the night before I got on the Greyhound bus, my father said, I want to tell you a story. So he told me the story about quit wearing the prism and my eye straightening up. I said, Dad, why didn't you tell me that story when I was 12? He said, I didn't want to influence you too much.
Yeah.
And I went, wow, really? Yeah. So I want to connect that story, Ron, with something that is not coincidental. It's innate driven. So when I came to London, I graduated and I came to London. There was 12 chiropractors in London. And by the time I got my license and got started, there was probably only 11 in practice. And I had a call. A young boy, his mother called me. His name was Chris. She called me up and she said on the phone, Dr. Hardick, I've heard that sometimes there can be a connection between the neck and the eye and a crossed eye. Would you know anything about that? What do you think of that question?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, did you tell me?
She said, do you know anything about that? Well, I know that I was the only guy in London. So you talk about certainty. Yeah, I know something about that. So she brought the kid into me. He had a crossed eye. I adjusted him 5 or 6 times, and he didn't have a crossed eye anymore. Now, here's my point. It didn't matter if that call came today. And there's 140 chiropractors in London now. If she was going to call somebody today, you know who she'd call? You know what she'd call. Absolutely. She'd call me because I had the connection with that story. But I was a young kid just out of school. Yeah. Green as green can be. First week in practice. So that's not by chance. That's innate. That
is absolutely. So when you went to Logan, right? That was what, 1965? 65.
Yes, sir.
Tell me what was tuition?
Well, I couldn't afford to go to school, so I got a job at Moog Industries, working 48 hours a week in an auto plant, working 4 p.m. till 12:30 a.m. And I went to school from 7:30 to 1:30. And my tuition, they let me pay it. Dr. Casey arranged for me to make payments by the month. So I paid $120 a month.
Wow. That's crazy.
And I had to pay it at the end of each month or I couldn't go to school the next month. He was tough as nails, Dr. Casey. Black Irishman, taught me to be self-disciplined a lot. And it was good for me.
Yeah. So Cliff, you went on, obviously when you graduated, you went back to Canada instead of going back to Nevada, right? And
yeah, I practiced in California for a year first.
Oh, I didn't know that. So where were you?
No, Oxnard.
Okay.
Oxnard, and I went there because I knew Gonstead technique, and there was a guy there named Earl Deuce. Great guy, very wealthy guy. He and a lawyer in town bought pretty much half of Catalina Island. And they took me over in a private plane for lunch. And he was trying to seduce me into looking after his patients because his mom lived in Oregon. She was going to have heart surgery. Yeah. So he wanted to go up there and be with her. So he asked me if I would help out for a week. So I went to Oxnard to help him for a week. And after the second week, he called and said, can you stay another week? And then after the third week, he called me and said, I'm not coming back. And I said, what? He said, I'm not coming back. And I lived in Hollywood Lynn and I lived in Hollywood. I thought I lived in Santa Monica, but I had a Hollywood address. And I was commuting to Oxnard every day, and I'd run about 80 miles an hour, take me 45 minutes to get there. Today, it's about a 3-hour drive.
Exactly. So did he want to sell you the practice, or what happened?
He did, but it's a long story. We came back to Canada. We didn't have any family there. This was a kid's dream. We're going to California. We're going to live on the beach. Rah, rah, rah. But we didn't have any family there. We were both young kids. We both loved our families. So we wanted to, so my wife said, let's go back home. And I said, where's that?
Yeah.
Because she was from St. Louis and I was from here. And she said, let's go back to London. I said, okay. So we came back.
Nice. And, you got back to London, you built this huge practice. I mean, you took the principle and you took your heart, and you took the message and great adjusting, and that was not, and that was in when? In
1970. Well, I came back here in 1970.
Yeah.
I stayed in California for a year.
Yeah. So, and then all of a sudden and chiropractic, as you know, back in 1970 was very different and known very differently as it is now in, 2020 going into 21. What'd you do to build your practice? You came to a town that had what? You said 14 chiropractors at the time?
12. I was the 13th one.
13?
I was number 13. Yeah. What did I do to build my practice? Well, I walked around downtown. I still practice right downtown. I'm in a Century building here. It's been a cornerstone of chiropractic, in my opinion, for the city of London for the last 45 years. So I walked around downtown. I shook everybody's hand. Hi, my name's Cliff Hardick. I'm a new chiropractor in town. If you ever need a chiropractor, I'd love to be your chiropractor. I did that with everybody downtown. People would just, I didn't do doctor's reports yet. I didn't know what they were, but I used to rent the YMCA every Tuesday night, and I had an open house to tell people what chiropractic was. And we used to have about 45 to 50 people come to the Y to hear my talk every Tuesday night. And that's how I guess that's how I built my practice. I don't know.
Absolutely.
And I used to show Reggie Gold tapes and all kinds of stuff at those meetings. Oh, yeah.
Right. And then you found your way where? You went down to Atlanta or somewhere, right?
Before that, I used to go to Parker. I was a pretty good Parker guy. One time I saw Sigafus before he ever went to Parker or DE. So, and I went to Thomasville to watch him. And after he went to Parker, I would always sit in the front row. And one time I was coming home, and this is very early on, Ron. I mean, you have goals. You want to see X number of patients. You've got maybe some income ideas, maybe patient volume ideas. And it was a Friday, and I heard Jim Sigafus speak. And I said, that's it, I'm going home. And I changed planes. I got a plane to Detroit. I rented a car. I had to drive it to London. And I remember driving home in the middle of the night on that Friday night. I thought my friends were saying, "Where are you leaving?" Actually, Davey Artis, he came to the front door with me. He said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I got the idea. I'm leaving. I don't want to."
Wait. So you went to a weekend conference
in Miami.
In Miami,
at the Fontainebleau.
At the Fontainebleau, heard Sigafus speak on Friday night.
Friday at lunchtime.
Okay, and you got the first plane out or whatever.
First plane out of town. I
left the conference because you got
it. I'm going home. And I was driving home, and I remember I came up to this big hill that overlooks my city. And I ran up that hill this morning from my house. And when I was driving home, I knew in my heart and in my mind that day, Ron, and I had a good practice already. I had already probably eclipsed everybody else in the town as far as volume was concerned. But that drive home, I knew that the patients there's people in my community needed chiropractic more than I needed their numbers, more than I needed new patients, more than I needed their income, more than I needed them. Chiropractic had to be part of their life. And by Thursday at noon that next week, and I didn't even have a chance to tell my staff how excited I was. Mm-hmm. I never changed the procedure. I never changed the form. And by noon on that Thursday, I had already seen 100 patients more than I had ever seen. And I never saw less than that ever again.
Yeah.
So that was just some ownership of what it is that we do took over me.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it sounds like you got what we call an adjustment above Atlas, right?
That was an adjustment above Atlas.
Something just happened there, right? And just kind of switched it. But you talk about building a practice. You talk about you went to Logan and probably had a great education there. And there's a lot of great chiropractors that came out of Logan, right? Ian Grossum and John Hoffman. And,
they lived across the hall from me.
Did they? Did they?
Yeah. When we were freshmen at Logan, you had to live on campus in the dormitory. Hoffman was 17. I was 18. Grossum was 21. He lived with Hoffman. I lived right across the hall.
It's crazy. I mean, when you talk about these people, and because our profession is so small, you talk about these people and the history of kind of who they played baseball with back on the Cardinals or whatever. I used to play with him. With Rocky Marciano. Just crazy stuff. But tell me this, because you got a message that hit your head from Sigafus, and you had to transpose that into your practice. And obviously, like you said, you didn't change a procedure. You didn't do all you did, something shifted in you to get that message out, right? There's got to be, what came of that? Like where, with certainty and other things, what happened with that?
Well, the certainty for me stayed forever. It's still here. Didn't go anywhere. I think when I say something to a patient, it's like I'm having a conversation with somebody. And if I say you need to do this, you need to do that, I'm not selling something. I'm not reading a script. I'm not trying to figure out how many, can I change their program of care, or can I bill more to insure? None of that stuff. I mean, that's never been part of who I am or what I am. I've never had an insurance-driven practice. I've always told people exactly what they needed. And back in the old days, I said, well, you're coming in for that anyway, whether you can afford it or not. That's kind of like the way I picked up a little Sigafus shoebox idea in the beginning, but I thank God we had a licensing board and I wasn't allowed to practice it full time.
Little box on the wall, right?
Yeah, exactly. But when it comes to certainty, I think I mentioned to you early on, Ron, I studied technique really well when I was in school, and I was very gifted. I was very lucky. I was really walking in hallowed halls back then, but I was too young to know it. I didn't know it. I learned Gonstead from Clarence Gonstead. I learned SOT from Major Desjarnais. I know you call him Desjarnais, but we have French Canadians up here. He looks like Major Desjarnais to me. I learned Thompson technique from Clay Thompson.
Yep.
I learned basic technique from the dean of my school, Dr. Delphin Casey, who I loved. He was actually Hugh Logan's nephew. Logan had already passed. So he was the most direct descendant of basic technique that was alive. And he used to call me over to adjust him. Now, the first time he asked me to give him a basic, I was shaking in my boots. Because I thought, oh my God, if I don't do this right, like it's So, and then I learned, subsequent to that, Arlen Furr was behind me in school. And then after he graduated and developed Activator, I studied Activator from him.
Yeah.
So, those are pretty
giants.
People.
They're giants.
Every one of those people owns certainty of what they're doing. Yeah. I mean, Clarence Gonstead, he and BJ had a big fight. Clarence didn't believe in innate. He would always set up on you and say, let me fix it. He would always say that, let me fix it. And BJ just had enough of them, and the two of them got into it, and he was never allowed back at Palmer again. But he was certain. I mean, Clarence figured nobody can adjust better than me.
Yeah.
And when he was 84 years old, he gave me a knee chest adjustment on his knee chest table. He was 84, and I saw on the floor underneath me these pair of ugly alligator shoes step in there, and I heard the words, let me fix it, and I thought my abdomen bounced off the floor. He was 84 years old, and I went to an upgrading class with him. And, and his wife was, he'd be in the clinic till 10 or 11 at night, and then his wife would drive him around to do house calls till 1 in the morning.
Yep. I mean, he was a healer. And,
he was.
And he was there. And you talk about certainty. He was, I saw one of his last lectures that he gave in 1978, I believe, in Portland, Oregon. And he was just a short guy that had, he was he kind of frail getting up on the stage. And the minute he started speaking, something took over,
It's over, yeah.
and he was just like this. How about Clay Thompson? Because I met Clay also when I was in school. And
Clay Thompson, I mean, once again, certainty, like not questioning anything, certainty. He just knew, when you check a leg length, checking a leg length. How about this? I learned to check leg lengths from Dr. Bill Deerfield.
Yeah.
He was a Michigan chiropractor. I met him when he was 92.
Yeah.
So I come from all these guys. Clay Thompson, Thompson technique works.
Yeah.
And if you learn it and you do it right, the only time you get mixed up is when you start mixing these techniques.
Yeah.
Then you're a mixer almost, right? So, but in a good mixer way, though. So, when you ask me about Logan, when I think back to Dr. Casey, who I really admired him, I really did. And he came in second semester to start teaching the principles of chiropractic. And he said, did Dr. Gale teach you about innate the last semester? And we said, yeah. He said, well, that's good. That's the last you're going to hear about it. The only reason we taught you that was it's part of chiropractic history, but we don't teach that here. And yet that clinic that he was in charge of building had no plug receptacles in it.
Right.
He said, because we don't use modalities. You don't need that to get results. So, so here I've got this guy telling us we don't believe in innate, and yet he knows that if you change the spine, the message I got from him was if the spine's distorted and you change it, patient's going to get better.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we don't believe in innate. I never figured that out. Maybe he was just, maybe he was like Clarence Gonstead. I don't know.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Bottom line,
I got to suck that stuff up.
Yeah.
So that was okay with me.
When you talk about certainty around that, the chiropractors from that era truly knew that what they did worked. They knew it. Unequivocally, they knew it. And when you laid on their table and you got adjusted, because Clay Thompson adjusted me, and when I graduated, Cliff, and I was driving from Atlanta, Georgia, back to Detroit before I was going to where I wanted to go. I went back to where my family was to see them, right? I was friends in Atlanta, Georgia, Marietta, Georgia, with Herbert Ross Reaver's son, Chappie Reaver, right?
Yeah.
Chappie at my graduation gave me my first original green book, Evolution or Revolution, and he said, Ron, would you do me a favor? I said, what's that? He said, you're driving 75, Highway 75, straight up to Detroit. Would you stop and see my father and mother over in Cincinnati? And I stopped. I had no idea who Herbert Ross Reaver was. I stopped, had dinner with him, and before we had dinner, got adjusted by him. He checked me. I was self-excited, and it was crazy. And I'll tell you a quick story. I get because this is how convicted these guys were. And he was joking with me. I asked him, and this was the truth. I asked him, "Can I watch you adjust?" And he said he wouldn't allow me to. He said, "No, an adjustment's a very sacred thing, and I hold that space with my patients. No problem." I sat in the reception room, watched people go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It was just amazing. And they came on and said, "Would you like to get checked?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely." I went back there, and the first thing he said to me was, "Do you adjust with the shirt on or the shirt off?" I graduated yesterday, and I'm this bravado graduate, and I go, "With the shirt on, of course." And he goes, "Mixer." And my face was like, and he goes, "Just kidding." He said, "Lay on the table." Gave me an adjustment that was amazing. I mean, but it wasn't the adjustment. But the certainty behind it.
The certainty, sure.
They just knew it, and I don't know where they got. Obviously they got it from BJ, right? It
all came from BJ. Yeah. You talk about the green books. I got lots of original green books. There's Evolution, Revolution, but they're all signed by BJ. Yeah. He's the guy that I never met, but I also know he's the guy that changed the plane. Yeah. Changed the playing field. Yeah. And then I had to go to his disciples, Sid Williams and Jimmy Parker. Yeah. BJ Palmer disciple, right? Sid Williams, a BJ Palmer disciple.
Yeah, people don't know Sid Williams used to speak on the Parker platform.
Yes, absolutely. I know that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and Sid had these clinics in Atlanta, and Jim Parker, he would pick out anyone who was doing great things, and then Sid started Dynamic Essentials, and it's just the history is So phenomenal, so phenomenal. Cliff, I've got a question for you because you were with the masters, with Thompson and with Gonstead and with Major, Desjardins, with these people, one step away from Logan, Vern Logan, where do you see chiropractic? Like where do you see it going, or what? I know where we'd like to see it, but really, what's your vision? For where you see it in the next 25 years.
So, I'm a pretty good studier of history, Ron, history of the world, and everybody says when there's trouble, it more often comes from within than from without. And sadly, from what I've seen going on in chiropractic, and I was thinking about this when I was shaving this morning, I was thinking about when BJ was trying to unify the associations and he got submarined by the NCA. They didn't support what he wanted to do. And he thought he had them in the bag on his third try. And it didn't work. And I think today we have more people that, and I got to be careful how I say this, because I don't want to offend people. The people that I might offend, they're just practicing what they were taught, not at Life West.
I get it.
So I don't want to offend them if they're watching, but chiropractic is being diluted, and there's an enemy within that wants to change what you and I do and what the principal schools teach for the sake of maybe, I don't know what, better acceptance or working with insurance or working in I don't know what a multidisciplinary practice is or could be. I have no idea what that is, because chiropractic philosophy, if you have that in you, you can't practice it a multidisciplinary practice and commingle those other things, because you'll get watered down. If you get watered down, you're no longer a chiropractor, even if you make the same adjustment.
Yeah, yeah.
So where do I see it going? I think we need to, as an optimist, which I am, I need to see the principal schools create some of those old timers that I learned from, come out with that you aren't going to be here, I'm not going to be here. Let's make sure the people that replace us are full of that kind of passion, conviction, ownership that the BJs and the Gonsteads and the Thompsons, even my dean of my school, Dr. Casey, that those guys have, that Jimmy Parker had, Sim Williams had, Fred Barge. We need to create more Fred Barges and Sim Williams.
Yeah, and
we need to do that.
Cliff, a very common saying that growing up in chiropractic was always separate and distinct, and it was a very honorable badge to wear, right?
Yeah.
Because we are separate and distinct.
Yeah.
From other healthcare professions, and it doesn't make those other healthcare professions wrong. It doesn't make those other healthcare professions less. We all have our place on the field, but chiropractic can bring so much if we just keep ourselves, what we do, and that's really about being separate and distinct.
100%.
It's beautiful, Cliff. Listen, we could talk forever. We could talk about your house that's just around the block from the BJ Palmer house in Sarasota, Florida. We could talk about all the things and places you've traveled. But the bottom line is, I think what our audience can see is that 51 years in practice, and you're just as strong on the internal, inside as you are on the outside. And it's just so beautiful and such a testament, and, such a wonderful that the chiropractors you've molded. I've seen people come to me and say, "Oh yeah, where are you from?" "Oh, they went to college in London and came over and got adjusted in your office, and that's what turned them on to being a chiropractor." Right? Just Canadian after Canadian who have links back to you, and how many people you must have sent to school, whether directly or indirectly. Thank you, and I want to thank you from our profession, because it's a huge thing. So, Cliff, any last words you'd like to share?
Yeah, I have one last thing I'd like to share, Ron. So I've talked about a lot of mentors of mine, but they all preceded me, except one, and that's you. You're a mentor of mine.
Oh,
but you came after me, and I am blessed that when you spoke at DE, I might have spoken at DE before you, but when you spoke at DE, I sat in the front row. When you spoke when we went to Chiro Europe, I sat in the front row. And when you speak, I sit in the front row and I listen, because Life West, not just Life West, chiropractic is blessed to have you. And I remember asking you how old you were, and you said you were 62. And I asked you, would you take the presidency? And you said, well, I'm thinking about it, I'm not sure. I said, Ron, if you were 64, you would take it. You remember that day?
Yeah, dude.
And you took it anyway. And I'm so grateful. Life West is blessed that you accepted that position, because chiropractic is going to be better off because you have a role now in educating people that are getting into our profession, and they're going to learn the kind of chiropractic that you and I have talked about today because of you. So thank you, Ron.
Thank you, Cliff. And as my grandmother used to say,
oh my God,
from your lips to God's ears.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Cliff, and I appreciate you so much, and I do. I appreciate the kind words, and
I didn't say that because
me and you are going to continue to roll down the track, man, and keep going as far as we can. And to our viewers, I hope that I hope you got the message today, and you really felt Cliff's heart and where it comes from, and I just want to appreciate all of you, for tuning into the Life West Leadership Line, being part of us. Spreading the message that we share with all the great people that we bring on, whether they're in the science, the philosophy, the art, wherever it is. We're so appreciative, and just know that we love you and we care about you. We care about all that you're doing for humanity, and that Life West is here for you. Okay, so until we come back again with our next leadership line, keep living your life from above down, inside out, hugging and loving the people around you, and I'll see you at the next leadership line.
Thanks so much, man.